tonight. We just wanted to recognize you and make sure I get this correct, but in your very first meet as a high school freshman, but competing against other freshmen, you finished first place in your very first meet, and that was at Birch Creek?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So tell us a little bit about the first meet and how that went.
Oh, it went great. I mean, it felt good. It was a bit toasty outside, but I mean, it was really fun. I mean, the course was a bit hard, but it was a good run. I liked it. Yeah.
That's awesome to compete against kids, 3 or so, 4 years older than you, and to go out and win your first meet is just an amazing accomplishment. And I know you've been working hard all the way through middle school as well, and you've had a lot of success in middle school as well. So I don't think it came to a surprise from your coaches or from any of us really. But again, I don't want to overlook the fact that a freshman coming in to compete against seniors, juniors, sophomores, and other freshmen to come out and win your first meet, that's a huge accomplishment and a tribute to the hard work that you've had just up to this point. So, and look forward to seeing a lot more in the future as well, because I think the future looks bright as well.
Well, thank you.
So, yeah, very good. Now the medal, is that the medal?
Yes.
Okay, you're gonna have to come a little closer and show it off to the board members too, because I kind of want to see that myself. Very nice.
Very nice.
Very shiny. Thank you. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Very
Well, thank
good.
you.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming. Again, you do not have to stay for any more of the meeting if you don't want to, but thank you for letting us honor you in this way, and just we love to celebrate students and their success, and just thank you for coming out and letting us do that. So thank you very much.
Awesome.
Very good.
Thank you.
Go get some ice cream. Well, that may not be in the regimen. I don't know. Maybe that's not a good idea.
Item 4, presentation discussion of facilities improvement plans by Troy D. Rhodes and Company.
All right, ready for us?
Let's do
Long
it.
way away. I
Yeah.
apologize if you're not. I was thinking we might be a little tighter today. So Brian Hunter in our office is here with me today, and so we're going to kind of share responsibilities here. So if you can't see something, feel free to get up and we can talk about it. Or I don't really have the capability of zooming, so I apologize for that. And we can send this out in an attachment if you want to see it after the meeting. Okay, so we're here to talk about STEM building expansion and athletic facilities upgrades. So we're going to start really with the STEM building. So a brief explanation about what we're trying to accomplish. Is that readable from that distance even? Okay. We'll try to make text as big as we can. When we get to the drawings, it's going to be impossible for even me to see some of it. But so specifically the STEM building across the street over there, we want to try to create some innovative and learning environments for future careers in science, technology, engineering, and math. So we've just got a couple of goals set up here to expand the programs for aviation, esports, computer education, and then also provide space for alternative education. So a couple more bullet points there, but really the intent is to try to establish some spaces that are outside of the current footprint by expanding the building, and we'll look at what that's going to look like coming up. So just to give you some orientation, this is what's there today. The Early Childhood Center sits here. The original footprint of the building there. Brian's going to take off and kind of explain what we're doing to achieve those goals.
Okay, so we've kept the original building intact. We are adding approximately 2,500 square feet of additional space that accounts for 1,500 square feet of aviation, esports, and computer learning. We're all in between the two spaces. We're adding the alternative education classroom. And then within that site, we're adding 9 new spaces for a total of 20 parking spaces. And so that would represent our intent for improving and expanding the STEM component of this project.
one of the things we'll do at the next stage, probably, I think we'll start more than likely next month, beginning to see some three-dimensional aspects of this, plus the other athletic facilities. But the intent is to try to kind of mirror what's happening, what was built originally over on the other side, and then fill in between as well. So you'll see that as we get further into the design and development over the coming weeks. So when it comes to the athletic facilities, there's a lot more facilities out there, there's a lot more activities out there, and so it's a lot more complicated. It's gonna take us a little while to explain some of this, but part of the goal is to upgrade the campus the appearance. When I say campus, we're talking about the athletic campus out there. Enhance the functionality and performance of the sports programs, expand the bleachers on the home side, and add visitors bleachers, and we'll explain how we're doing that. Realign and upgrade the track, as well as the surrounding areas around the track. To install synthetic turf on the football / soccer, as well as portions of the baseball and the softball fields. A big portion of the complexities have to do with the locker rooms, so renovating and expanding locker rooms for coaches and students, obviously. And then obviously we want to try to provide as durable and efficient as materials as possible. So again, Brian's going to kind of jump in and explain what the focus is. We'll start just with the slide about this, just to give you orientation. Obviously, football field here, 50th Street, Northwest 50th, so north is kind of that direction facing toward Brian over there. But the intent of this is to describe really about what the existing facility usage is. And we walked out on the property, we walked around with several of the coaches, and I think there may have been a couple of you that were here with us that day as well initially. And then we've had several subsequent meetings to try to better understand how the facilities are used, because they're used a lot in terms of even just overlapping among sports and among seasons and so forth. So,
Yeah, I think.
is that too much?
I think that's good for that.
Okay.
That page is good. Go to the
All right.
next one. And so similarly, this is existing facilities. The focus is more on the locker rooms. And so we've got the football component to the west, the soccer with 7th and 8th grade football.
It's kind of combined. The stripes basically take the two colors because they're used by multiple entities.
And then to the south, we've got the baseball and softball.
So that's locker room.
Right, as currently used. And then this is what's being proposed. So we will, in preceding slides, we will get into more detail, we'll zoom in. But for now, this is an overview of everything that is proposed in order to make the facilities where the coaches can get the most use out of it. Okay, so in this spreadsheet,
You'll enjoy this one, right? You might be able to see it from there.
so in this spreadsheet, along the far left-hand corner are all the sports programs that are being provided. And then the next column over, these are all the teams that Bethany has. And then across the top, we have all the locker rooms that are being provided. Some are being, you'll see at the top, some are being renovated, some are new. There's 2 that are new. One is not being addressed in any way, just because it's in pretty good shape. And so we've identified, as an example, cross country will use this locker room in the fall, and then track and field will use the same locker room in the spring. And so that's what this spreadsheet is trying to accomplish.
Make sure we haven't missed anything.
Yep. Okay, so football upgrades. So these are all identifying the upgrades that benefit the football program. So we've got the new turf field, number 1. We've got renovated locker rooms, which would be 2 through 5. And then we are expanding the bleachers, which is number 6. And then we're taking the current bleachers and relocating them to number 7, which will be a new visitor section across the field.
Doesn't exist at all right now. No visitors seating.
And then we are also adding fencing that will provide secure entries.
Got an entry point there.
And number 8 at the bottom.
Slightly down here, it's actually access from the parking lot that's in between SNU's rugby field and football field.
And then number 9 is the press box and concession, which will be a new facility. For cross country, the girls currently have a locker room, and it's my understanding that the boys use the football locker room, and so they would get a whole new locker room. And then the middle school locker room, number 3, is being renovated. And then there's another 3 over here for the girls.
This is an existing space that's being renovated. It's actually gonna serve multiple purposes. It's one of those flex spaces that the coaches, we all talked with them, and they kind of agreed that if we can create those flexible spaces, rather than trying to dedicate specific locker rooms for specific sports and seasons, and it's just too much at that point.
So track and field, this has the most upgrades. We've got number 1 is a new boys locker room. Number 2, existing girls locker room. And then we've got the 2 3s that we just mentioned.
Three.
Similar to cross country, so middle school locker rooms. And then 4 is a new 7-lane track
It's all the way around.
with an 8-lane straight.
That's basically the section that goes completely east to west on the north side.
And so what's a little different with this one is,
By the way, you currently have a 6-lane track, for those that don't know, so I'm sorry to
and the
interrupt.
current is, it kind of tilts this way a little bit. So by aligning it and expanding it out a little bit, we're able to fit in a 400-meter track. It does get tighter. We have to move the fence on the SMU side just a little bit. It bumps up to, what is this?
It's the city of Bethany's water treatment facility.
That's right.
But it's within, I think it's a couple of feet or so of that fence. It's tight, you know, but in order to try to get the 7th lane in there, we really had to kind of squeeze and tug a little bit.
And so number 5 is the D-shaped infield for field events.
So that would be the same kind of track surface there.
And then number 7 is a new pole
Six.
vault.
Six.
Oh, sorry. No, number 6 is the new long jump.
Yeah. 7's pole.
And then 7's pole vault.
Those currently exist over here right now. We've got pole vault and long jump over here. And so one of the goals was to try to create a secure fenced area. And so we can, if we have the room, we can do that and provide new fencing right there to be able to kind of secure the area to keep other students, other teams from wandering all over the place when they're not supposed to be.
And 8 is a new steeplechase hit. 9 is a
Trivia, does everybody know what steeplechase is?
I don't know what it is.
I only see it in the, I only see it in the Olympics.
Just in the
Yeah.
Olympics, right? So, this was actually, an idea that the SNU track coach brought to our attention because, we're also talking with them to see if it's possible to try to, whatever we provide for Bethany, would make sure that it meets the collegiate requirements. And so that was a request that they had to see if it's possible within budget and so forth, that it would love, and it doesn't just benefit SNU. She acted like there's actually several junior Olympic events, I think, that she mentioned that can be held at this event if it has a steeplechase. So steeplechase is basically, I don't know what the distance is, I think it's typically like 5,000, like a 5K, but they run however many laps they're running, but then they jump a hurdle every, I don't know, probably 200 meters or so. And then they go off the track a little bit, they run, they jump a hurdle that's actually extra high, and you land in the water pit. So if you've ever seen
It's like a
runners landing in a water pit, and then they continue running, that's steeplechase. I have no idea why or where that came from.
I've seen equestrians.
That's what steeplechase is.
But
So,
never in person.
and obviously you don't want a water pit in the middle of the track, so you have to kind of go off the track to make that happen. Fair enough, Coach?
Yes, good explanation.
All right.
Jumping back into 9 through 12 are kind of the things that we talked about with the football program. This all benefits track and field as well. But the new thing is number 13 is a relocated tent area.
So they currently kind of, most of the time, if I'm not mistaken, they kind of use this area to set up tents for visitors, track teams to be able to kind of get out of the shade, set up their meeting areas. And so because we're expanding some of the locker room spaces and taking up more of this space, there's a large grassy area up there. If we shift some fencing around, it allows for that tent set up, not just for track and field, but also if there's tailgating activities or something pre-game, if you want to do that, I think it works really well. And there are some duplicates, but that's part of the goal, is to be able to benefit football and track with the same kind of amenities.
Okay, so baseball upgrades, we've got a new turf infield, number 1. A renovated coach's office and storage area is number 2. And then new locker room addition, number 3. Bleachers. That's right, yeah, so the new, we've got, number 4 is new home bleachers. Number 5 is the new press box and concession.
Also utilizes that same entrance, obviously, for baseball and softball as well. And then there's another one of those duplicates allowing for that flex space to be used for baseball, middle school. Ready for softball?
So the softball will receive a new turf field, and new locker rooms. That's number 2. And then number 3 is new home bleachers, and then number 7.
Yeah, that's a 7, that's a 7. It looks like a 1, but it's a 7.
So we're relocating the home bleachers to the visitor side.
Move those over there. And then these will get the new bleachers. And then again, utilizing the middle school locker room for softball as well, flex space. Same secure entrance down by the parking lot.
And this is soccer, new turf field, obviously repainted for soccer. And then renovated boys, girls, and middle school locker rooms, 2 through 4. And then expanded bleachers, well,
Same
that's,
setup.
yeah, kind of same thing. And new press box, same things. And then campus appearance upgrades. We're proposing, number 1, a screen wall with branding, which there'll be slides after this that will kind of explain more of what we mean by that. And then a new branded entry, there, got 2 and 2. And then a new courtyard at 3. And then refresh branding at the facades at 4, which is the training buildings. And so this is a idea we had for, as an inspiration image for how we could do a screen in front of the existing buildings, and then there's also some HVAC units, which we have an image of that we'll show you. So it will screen that, it'll provide a unifying look across 50th Street, and just make it'll clean up that facade. As far as branding, don't necessarily pay attention to the materials, but as far as the opportunities for, you can easily envision Bethany Broncos across that facade, and so just trying to show what could be possible with this wall in front. And then here's the existing facade with those HVAC units that we would be screening.
So the idea then is to bring a screen of some scale and size across the front of this to obscure the equipment that's there, the ductworks that's there. But then, as Brian was talking about, provide an opportunity for some branding similar to what you're already seeing on the building, on that north face.
And then lastly, we're considering upgrades to the basketball, for the basketball program, and just giving a portion of the seats to have seat backs.
And we haven't really talked in any detail at all on this, don't have any idea about quantities or size or locations or anything like that. It's just, don't wanna forget about it, so it is part of the, at least the menu of ideas that we've been talking about. Next step.
So next steps, we're gonna start exploring 3D images. We'll start exploring what that wall could look like. We will also start doing phasing and cost estimating, and that'll all happen sometime in the future.
Any questions that you have for us this evening about these?
As a part of that, where the football, soccer field is, and maybe softball and baseball, we currently have very small bathrooms.
Mhm.
Is there a room for new bathroom facilities within this?
Yes.
For the public?
What's the best one to go to?
The furthest one out.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna zoom, I'm gonna go back to probably right there. Well, currently, let's talk about where they're at currently.
Yeah, so currently they're here, and they are small, they're also not functioning, and it's my understanding that they don't get used much.
Yeah, they don't
Is
use
that fair?
much for some of the larger events there. Yeah, we don't use them much.
And so the
For
new
the, like the big
restrooms-
track meets, they don't open them.
Oh,
They
okay.
put,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
but for soccer,
We open them. Yeah,
they're open.
yes.
And my understanding for some of the track meets is they actually, I think,
Yes.
will actually utilize, this is SNU facility, they'll actually utilize the SNU facility, open up the fence and be able to allow students to go back and forth between these two campuses. And there's been conversations, I think, with SNU about continuing that as well, if needed, but go ahead, Brian.
So we're proposing 2 new restrooms here off the courtyard, and then we're also providing a gate here for visitor access to gain access to these SEU restrooms.
Wasn't highlighted as a part of any of those individual projects, but we recognize the need and have accounted for that space.
okay.
I might add to that too, in more recent conversations with SNU, they're even open to that fence on the bottom, like we just have it right where we needed it to go. They're open to that fence going all the way back to that building, and then you may have an opportunity to have fencing that opens on both sides, so that when we have an event, we open these gates, they can use that facility, but not get further into the football stadium, and then vice versa when we have football games and they have football games. So we've talked about those things a little bit, and again, that would be if we feel like we have an event that would require additional restrooms apart from the new ones that would be there, but
I have a
There are
question.
options.
I have a
Yes.
question about that, and so I guess that's, the upper is your eastern edge of
Yes.
the property.
Right,
So is it abutting the property line?
you're talking about the track itself?
Yeah.
It's probably within 2 feet of the fence. We don't have a final survey, we haven't done a formal survey for this property. We have old surveys that were done from years ago with Jerry Lester, the architect that helped the campus create this out here, I believe. And so we're looking at a combination of both aerial photos and old surveys and improvements that we found, but for right now, that's about the best we have
Yeah.
from a survey standpoint.
I mean, you worry, especially you're abutting the city over there, if there's easements or anything that might prevent you from.
You typically are not allowed to build structures, so
Right.
occupiable buildings or even sheds in some cases, like for storage. You're restricted to be within certain distances on those. You can typically build setbacks, you can typically build parking spaces in setbacks and easements.
Mhm.
And so I don't know that I've officially asked anybody at the city yet, cause we haven't even really really gotten to that point, in my opinion, but I think at some point, we definitely will have to cross that bridge.
Yeah.
And find out, you know, if there are restrictions. Right now, how close is that currently over there to that fence?
A couple feet.
Yeah, it's probably 3 or 4 feet maybe right now.
Yeah.
And so we're just kind of pushing
Getting
it
a
up a
little
little
bit.
tighter, also trying to make sure that if you're in that outer 7th lane and you're, I mean, you know, if you're in track and you're on the outer lane, you're running as close to that inside lane as you can, line. But if you're on the outside, you're not rubbing your elbow against a chain link fence. So we're trying to keep a little bit of buffer there. But I think, you know, one of the early sketches we had that we met with the coaches on, we had 48-inch track lane widths times 7. You know, it starts expanding pretty quickly. We had conversations both with the Bethany coaches as well as with the SNU coaches to make sure what the minimum requirements were, and they ended up being 42. 48 is kind of reserved for your international competition, which we're probably not gonna have here. And so, we squeezed everything down to 42 lane widths, which is completely fine. What it did though, is it allowed for this edge to be a little further away from the building, cause we were pretty tight, honestly, coming this direction. We kept that where it was, but if for some reason the city says we can't get that close to their fence, we could potentially
Shift
shift the
down.
whole thing down a little bit, I think.
So is-
Yeah.
Is that, line SNU's property? Is that the property line down there?
So
Not really.
this property is not, divided like that. So this
Okay.
entire property, meaning this and this, is actually all, the city of Bethany property. And so there are no legal, that I know of, any legal division lines between property owners. It's city of Bethany property. City of Bethany leases to the Bethany Public Schools the whole property, and then Bethany subleases to SNU this area down here.
I see.
And so, if there's a legal document somewhere between Bethany Public Schools and SNU that defines where the line is,
Yeah.
that would be something we would wanna talk about, but it's really mostly been a pretty, you know, I won't say handshake, but I mean, you know, cause there are legal documents, I believe, in place, but.
I hate handshakes.
But it's, we work with each other, I think, from what I understand, you know, to make sure that everybody's happy. But-
Yeah.
But the fence is essentially what creates the dividing line between the two entities, not properties, but entities.
Right. So up on the east side, by that open space there to the right of the field, and even further, and
Okay.
there's got a little bitty buildings or something there?
Yeah, there's all kinds.
And what is that used for up there? It seems like a big space.
It is, and in fact, that's where the current pole vault
Oh,
and
uh-huh.
long jump pits are. There's several storage buildings.
It's probably identified on.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, if I look right here, so that's where the current long jump, I think long jump runs one direction and pole vault runs the other direction within this
That's
area.
the track equipment storage.
And those are equipment storage buildings for track, and so, and then, I mean, there's several miscellaneous buildings out there. Our thought though, if possible, is if we can fit all of the activities within the fenced area, then we're not having to necessarily allow or provide opportunity for those students to kind of wander around the rest of the complex.
I see.
So it wasn't something we set out to try to say, you know, can we relocate the pole vault pit
Right.
and the long jump pit, but it is a result of being able, you know, to have a more use of a space up there, and over on this side, and just trying to establish some boundaries for the track events as best we can. I would imagine they'll still continue to use those potentially for their hurdle store, I don't know what everything is in their hurdle storage and.
They're kind of shipping containers, so they can be moved anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
So yes, but there is definitely space up there, and, you know, right now, this is not all the track and field, there's, well, down
Yeah.
here. Yeah, so we've got, let's see if I can get this right, shot put, discus, you guys don't do hammer throw, right?
But that's where they would do it,
Yeah,
down there
so-
during the college event.
So, yeah, most of those, or javelin, does anybody do javelin? This age?
Not.
Okay, so those events are currently being held down here. You would, and many times, if you're trying to create a pure track and field complex where you're not trying to double for soccer and for football and everything else, you would try to accomplish as many of those activities as you can inside the field. Where you would have, I mean, just like when you're watching the track and field events on the Olympics, those people that are doing hammer throws and javelins and discus and shot put, they're all happening, if I'm not mistaken, they're all happening within
Right.
the infield of
Oh,
the track.
sure.
And so in this case, you know, Bethany's are, and I don't know if SNU uses these or not.
They do.
Okay, so that's all happening actually over here on the side. So there is gonna be some movement of people outside of the fence for sure, unless we somehow figure out a way to move those up there or something. We hadn't talked about that. Anyway, so, yeah.
So one of the things when we were looking, touring those buildings, does your plan renovate all of those buildings that are on the left-hand side?
It's kind of a combination. I mean,
Okay.
there's very maybe I'm wondering maybe if that right there, so.
It's really just that,
Yeah.
everything's being renovated except for.
We're either building new or we're doing renovation. You walked through those spaces, didn't you?
Yes,
Yeah,
I did.
They're pretty rough, I mean,
Yeah,
honestly.
very rough, I'd say.
So the only one that's really in good shape, we feel like, and to the point where maybe it doesn't need renovation, is that. You'll have to help me find that on the plan, Brian, but if I shift forward, oh, is that it?
So it's this.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right there. It's on the,
Oh,
I guess the east end, so this is new construction here.
I see.
So it's on the east end of that existing building, and it's, I think, one of the newest
Yeah, it is.
It is.
expansions of that campus out there. And it's actually in pretty decent shape, so we weren't doing anything to that, but new construction in a couple of places, and then renovation to various degrees. I mean, depending on budget, really is what's gonna set the budget. Does that help?
Yeah.
Troy, was there any consideration given to ticketing for the different events, like a gate, so to speak, for baseball games and a gate for softball?
So we've got ticket booth set up right there by that entry gate on that side. My understanding is that when they open this gate up, they have to put somebody down there as well, to accept, cash or payment for the tickets. So my assumption is that we would have a similar setup there unless we wanted to provide some kind of an actual, booth of some kind,
Yeah.
like a fixed booth.
I think what has happened in the past that I've been aware of, they raised the garage door on the, whatever that building is called, right there, that.
Indoor facility.
Yes,
This
the
one?
indoor
Indoor.
facility,
Yeah.
yes.
This middle door they raise it,
Okay.
just to kind of catch people on the sidewalk.
Oh,
Yeah.
as they're coming through
Yeah.
this way.
Yeah,
Okay.
so they're not out in the weather, but I didn't know if there was
Okay.
something allowed.
We didn't talk about that. I mean, we basically just talked about the fact that there's a
Yeah.
gate down here, and maybe if we could create a better entry point, better
Mhm.
signage, better kind of branding, if you will, for that
Yeah.
point, that you could pick
Security.
them up on the way in down here at the gate. And whether that's for softball, baseball, potentially track, although I would imagine you're probably coming in over there for the most part on track.
Yeah, it'd be,
Potentially visitor football.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you've got a middle school football game out here, your home crowd may come here and come in that front door, but since your, visitors bleachers are on this side, you have the opportunity to walk around through a sidewalk. That's another thing we didn't specifically point out, but we are connecting these bleachers with a sidewalk all the way around on the outside edge of a fence between the sidewalk and the track, all the way around over here for access to concessions and restrooms and entry, but you also have that same opportunity to come in over here on this side, in case you're parking down on this side for a visitor away team.
it'd be great if we could allow for ticketing or, at some
Like a
point.
cover.
At both
Yeah,
locations.
yeah, out of the weather at the,
Over here?
on the west side, yeah.
Okay, yeah, and so I think that's really just a matter of maybe providing some element of a shelter.
Cover,
and
yeah.
a cover of some kind,
Yeah.
okay. Anything else for us this evening? I see lots of eyes doing this. Sorry. Well, is that all right if we send this,
Yeah, please
send this
do.
PowerPoint?
That'd be great.
out?
That'd be
Yeah.
great.
It's probably a very large file, so it'll have to be, done through a download link, but we can do that.
Okay. And then I'll just share with the board, and you may know this already, but, certainly this is, a large, wish list, and, what we will know is when we get the amounts, probably this will be a modular type thing. I would imagine it's gonna be outside the realm of, just snapping our fingers and, making it happen. And there will be some pieces of it that once we get those amounts, and we've asked Troy to do it this way, so it is modular, so that we can prioritize. And so there may be things like, just as an example, maybe we would want to focus on facilities and locker rooms over turf on a field, or turf on any of the fields, like depending on what we can accomplish with that same amount of money. And so really it will come down to, okay, here's the cost of all these various projects and different modules of those. What are the top priorities, and then what can we do year 1, year 2, year 3, and what avenues do we want to seek to try to accomplish some of those things. And so, the fear is you dream big and you get this amount that is not attainable, which is going to be what happens. We're not going to be able to accomplish this in a year or maybe even 2, but we can't even begin to create a plan until we know the costs we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And so while we know it's probably going to be out of reach to just do all this, which it looks awesome and it would be great to be able to do that, it allows us to create a plan to move forward with. And however many years that takes, at least it's a start to that process. So it's exciting. I think they've done awesome work in giving us some things to look at, and certainly there are some things that need to happen. As Ms. Yates pointed out, there are some things that need to happen as soon as we can, but we have some other things that we'll have to look at as well and balance it with the budget, and working with the business office, Dr. Jasper, about how we can do some of those. Some of the things that we are currently doing are nice to have out of the way as well. The roofing project is nice. We don't have to worry about that for a long time. And there's some other things that we've kind of addressed that maybe save us money down the road, that now we can start to focus on these things. The other good thing about all of this is our campus footprint, with the addition of the STEM building and those classrooms, we really should be in a place where we are good for a long time. I mean, I can't even foresee what we would need beyond that, apart from just internal additions or improvements. And that's really nice too, because for the number of kids we have and the number of kids we would like to get to, our footprint should be good on campus for what we're wanting to do, which allows us to look further out at, okay, now let's just make all these things as good as we can make them. So, get all excited with a lot of great plans, and it is things that we want to do, but also want to be realistic with this board and the community that it's going to take some planning moving forward too. It's not going to be something we can even pass a bond and get all of it done. So, but we'll talk more about those details down the road.
It is exciting to see that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you guys.
Great.
I'll also add to that, I do appreciate the collaboration that's taken place with Troy Rhodes and the coaches, and them just being willing to bring them in and ask them, how do you use it? What do you need? What do you want? What will help you? And just the coaches' input, and a lot of what you see is just based on the people who are actually there using it on a daily basis, and that's the best way to know how to move forward. So I appreciate the coaches' time and helping with those plans.
They've actually been fantastic about. We've sent them lots and lots of emails individually asking for feedback and input, and so you're not seeing a lot of that tonight, but even understanding the numbers of lockers and the types of lockers and how big the office spaces need to be. I mean, there's a lot of background that you're not seeing in this presentation just because we're not ready to get to that level of detail right now, but it helps us understand the potential size issues for planning at this scale. So that'll come soon.
One thing you might make note of that I just kind of caught as you were talking is cross country and softball are in the same seasons, but I think we kind of had designated that locker room, that flex space,
okay,
maybe for both, which would be about, okay, so maybe there's a way to do both, but we may just need to look at that again to make sure that that could work, or look at other options, but yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, item 5, consent agenda. The following items which concern reports and items of routine nature, normally approved board meetings, will be approved by 1 vote unless any board member desires to have a separate vote on any of them. 5A, approve the minutes of August 13th. And B has all these contracts. Do I have to read those? Let's see.
Thank you.
Discussion
you.
possible
Thank
action
you.
to approve the following contracts agreements for fiscal year 25, the COSA DLS program. FDP, I should assume that's First Bethany Bank Trust. Positive pay agreement, camp class and insurance. D, middle school cheer coach. E, BFC facility use. F, musical theater. G, BFC fall testing facility use. H, prom venue. I, BFC corporate membership. 5C, discussion possible action approve the district's capacity of students for each grade at the site. 5D is the prom venue. What, we got that in there twice?
The attorney asked me to put the actual approving the contract and actually approving the venue.
The venue, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Andy asked me to put that in there.
Okay. 5E, discussion possible action to approve the following out-of-town, out-of-state overnight trips. National Science Teaching Association Conference, November 6th through 9th of 24, New Orleans. OSDTDA Palm State, December 12th through the 15th, 2024 in Tulsa. Sea Aircraft Owners and Pilot Association National High School Aviation STEM Symposium Conference, November 16th through the 19th of 24, Atlanta, Georgia. The Alva Basketball Tournament, December 12th through the 14th, 2024 in Alva. 5F, approve the additions of the following activity fund accounts: baseball, Key Club, junior class cheer, NJHS, POM, miscellaneous, and family and consumer sciences. 5G, approve the financial fund reports. So,
Our activity fund is looking good. Everybody is doing fundraisers, so that's being kicked off very well. On the function summary report, we think most everything encumbered that we're gonna be spending, and then we just have our regular operating things that we're gonna have throughout the year. On the function summary report. When we get to the tracking sheet, we've started collecting. It'll be a little bit before a lot of our taxes come in. We did get our first state aid payment in. We have gotten all of our prior year federal revenue in at this point. All of those claims are in, so we're doing pretty good.
Do we need to take action on the consent agenda?
We're
for
still
this
on the
part?
We're
Oh, we're still
still
on,
on the
okay,
consent.
I got you,
Yeah,
okay.
I'm just doing my
Oh,
normal.
5G,
I
I got
just-
you,
I
okay.
just kind of,
Okay.
I just kind of summarize it
I
because it's a
gotcha.
lot of information.
Yeah, I got you.
So I'll take any questions you might have.
any questions on any of that, or do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve consent agenda items 5A through 5G?
Second.
Roll call vote?
Jaggers,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Yates.
Yes.
Pettit.
Yes. Item 6, approve encumbrances for the general fund on payroll number 299 through 388 for $358,899.69. Change orders for general fund $122,836.96. General fund payroll $70,000 through $70,595, $13,578,708.50, and the encumbrances for the building fund non-payroll 13 through 14, $492,989.40.
So I will say, at the last board meeting, we approved buses out of the building fund, and since then, I've switched that up, and you're gonna see that again as a general fund encumbrance. We're not getting buses out of both, we're just moving, where we're pulling that out of. And then, also, I think on building fund, let me look at our change order.
Were those the diesel buses? Sorry.
Yes, they
Okay.
are the diesel buses, yes.
Are they gonna be yellow after you wrap them?
So
Yeah.
that's kind of been a process of how to accomplish a couple of different goals. So one goal was to have some activity buses that are nice to take to, you know, parades, things like that, state tournament. Well, originally we were looking for new buses that were white that we could then wrap. As we went through that process, trying to find specifically white buses that they would come available and then they would be sold, and so it was very difficult to find white buses that just came available. So we switched to the idea of, well, we already have, and the buses we were finding were also, 21, 22, 20, in that time frame, and we already had some diesel buses that were newer that were in that time frame. So rather than trying to find white buses that were newer that fit the need, we decided and found out we could paint some current yellow buses white that we already had, and then wrap those, which was gonna be a lot faster process than trying to find the right white buses. So we did that and kinda had, okay, we've got our activity buses kind of designated, they're diesel, and we've got a plan for that. In the meantime, we also believe that we need 2 more diesel buses to kinda complete, and we feel like this will really kinda complete the fleet. So that's where the 2 yellow diesel buses come in, is it really kinda completes all of our needs and allows us to then get on a schedule where we don't have the bus needs as much, or if we do, it's 1 a year or 1 every other year, and we'll be on a schedule moving forward. So it was 2 different things. It was trying to get activity buses, and we were looking to purchase those. Then we decided just paint some buses we have and wrap those, and then just find 2 yellow buses, which is a lot easier to do. So that's kind of the process.
So the
That makes sense.
29,000 for wrapping bus 3 and 4, that's for the buses you're gonna buy?
No, that is for
Our
buses
current
we
buses.
currently
Oh,
have.
okay.
We're getting them
Yeah.
repainted and wrapped.
Yeah,
Painted and wrapped.
painted and
Painted
wrapped,
white and wrapped.
Yeah.
That's that includes the painting then too?
It's
Mhm.
supposed to. That's what
Yeah.
I'm told.
Yes.
It remains to be seen yet, but that's what
Yeah.
I'm told.
All right.
Yeah. And we should be getting proofs for the wrapping too. I'll share those with you guys when we get them, let you
Yeah.
look at them before we move forward with those, but.
The other kind of move or shift that we've made this year, normally we pay our Oklahoma Building Services custodial contract out of general fund. And we already approved the encumbrance out of general fund, but I'm gonna shift that into the building fund, and we're gonna pay some of our red bud, and I'm gonna explain why a little bit more, but that's why you're approving it again, if you notice that. And then I'll answer any questions you have about any other.
On PO 331, where did we have to install panic hardware for the fire and stuff?
Okay. Well, we are still working on our fire inspections, and so out at the athletics complex, our lovely new fire inspector went out there, and he decided that most of the doors needed panic hardware, on them, and so that is where the panic hardware is being installed. And for reference, so everybody knows when they see the fire inspector, he's cost us about $20,000 in upgrades in a year.
Great.
So, yeah.
I will say, we have the new fire inspector at our church trying to get our new building done, and he's cost us
Yes. Yes, yes.
I think the conversations we've had, have been, it's just difficult to go many years, passing inspections, and I'm not saying that these are not codes that need to be followed, and we want kids to be safe, and if this is what's required to be safe, we want that. But it has been a challenge to get all of these things in the past 2 years. So last year we had a lot of these things happen on site, but the athletic facilities did not have the same recommendations. Well, this year there was a focus on the athletic facilities, and so there was a expense last year, now there's an expense this year, and again, it's not wrong. I'm not, I think they're going by code, and so hopefully after this year, we'll be caught up on all those things how it should be, but we have expressed that it is a challenge when things that have been the same way for many, many years are all of a sudden being required, and we're gonna get them there, we want them to be right, but it's just a challenge. But hopefully after this, all of our facilities have been inspected and are up to code and meet those standards, and we won't have these, you know, large sums moving forward, hopefully.
And on 348, is that field overseeding, is that like all of our fields, or is this one specific field?
I'm pretty sure that that is baseball and softball, and help me, Mr. Nyberg, is it also football and soccer?
Yes.
Okay.
So back to the fire inspector. I'm just curious, what did we have to do on the signage?
I will let Mr. Mott answer that one specifically because
Sorry.
I have not seen the signage yet.
So-
I know we had to put up some like
exits?
yeah,
Exit
I'll let
routes
him.
or?
Yeah.
So, are you looking at an impressions PO or a Hayes?
Yes,
Okay.
it's impressions.
So I did 2 impressions purchase orders. One of them was for the fire inspector required the physical address of the athletic complex be visible. It was not posted anywhere, and so they created, or impressions created a 3x3 sign with our address on it. It has been posted outside of the athletic complex. The other signage that he required was, we've got 2 interior doors on the northeast section of the annex, the storm shelter. They are currently mag locked up at the top, and when the fire alarm goes off, those mag locks release and those doors close. Unfortunately, egress goes out those 2 doors, so they can't close. So I have to disconnect those from the fire alarm panel, and he requires signage, 4 total signs, 1 on each side of each door, that says these doors must remain open unless there is a severe weather event.
Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
On 330, it says, business office blanket.
Yes.
Is that for a real blanket?
No.
Okay.
It means blanket PO. So
Oh, okay.
it's so when we roll the new fiscal year, this PO automatically goes in place next year so that we're able to do beginning of the year supplies and things like that
I
with the
see.
purchasing card.
Blanket meaning broad.
Yes, broad.
Got it.
On 361, what type of, that's a FNBO for the P card, what kind of maintenance supplies and materials do we need for purchase cards?
It's not for the purchasing cards. It's just, this is the maintenance department's P card blanket PO to get, like, if they need to run somewhere and get paint or something. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, I read that.
You're like
Totally
filling,
different.
No, that's
are you
okay.
filling the P card so that it has a balance on it that the person can then go use? Is that what
They
you're
all
doing?
have a limit of $2,000 on
I
them,
see.
and so
Okay.
they have to have a PO in place before we'll check it out to them, and
Oh,
they go.
okay.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so
I thought we were having to purchase.
Yeah, even though they
No,
they
no,
have
no,
the
no, no.
card.
For maintenance of the
Yeah,
card.
even though they have the card,
Yeah.
they still have to have a purchase order in
Yeah.
place, so this just avoids having to do one every time.
Absolutely, yeah, that makes sense.
So
Thank
much
you.
better.
Okay, I have one more question.
Mhm.
I think just one more. I lost track of which number it was, but vape detectors in the high school, what additional space did we put those in?
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we added one in the boys' locker room basketball, girls' locker room basketball, girls' visitor basketball, or girls' visitor side, and then we added one into the STEM building as well, which houses our alternative school. We just saw, I mean, kids are sneaky, and they can find places, they know there's stuff that's not there, and so we had some incidents that occurred that we wanted to make sure we were, I mean, almost everywhere now has one in the building. I don't think there's a bathroom in here that doesn't have one, from middle school to high school. Even in the elementary gym, they have them. So we're pretty covered, sans faculty restrooms, I guess, but everything else is, I feel comfortable, I really do. Knock on wood. But yeah, otherwise, we're good. We're just thankful that you guys are willing to help spend money to stop this problem.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
My last question's on 388,
Okay.
very last one,
Okay.
chemical waste removal.
Yes, whenever we just have some different waste, and specifically this one is something that Mr. Mont was working on. I don't know what the chemical waste was, but it's typical for a school to have to pay to get certain types of waste removed. Do you know what specific
Yeah, it's
waste?
considered hazardous material, paint, acetone, paint thinner, things like that.
Okay.
And then we just have some change orders where, you know, we've either added to the PO, added service to the PO, or I've moved it around, like changed coding or something like that on the change order report. Any other questions?
Motion to approve encumbrances as presented.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Jaggers,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Yates,
Yes.
Pettit.
Yes. Item 7, estimate of needs presentation.
Okay, so I put the publication, I've given you guys all a copy of the publication sheet. Also attached in the item online is the full estimate of needs. And when you go through that, it is just going through all of our expenditures that we've had, and we talked about them in detail when we were closing the books. So it has lists of all that, and it's much more detailed, but the main part is it's telling us how much money on the publication sheet we have to spend. We don't wanna spend all of it. So what they're telling us right now is we can have a budget of $22,911,000 and some change. And so they go through and they have listed over, over on the general fund side, in the box that says general fund, they've listed out the revenue that we're gonna bring in each of these different function codes, and that's an estimated 16.1. And then if you go back up to the top of the general fund box, so they put that 1608 up there, and they add our carryover, which was the $6 million carryover. And then they do some different math, and they end up with our 22.9. So that's what they're saying, we can spend that much. Now, if we spend all that, we don't have anything to start the next year, so obviously we aren't going to spend that amount. And then up at the top, it just goes through the cash fund balance, the general fund detail, and we had a $6 million carryover. If you go over one more box for the building fund, we had a $1.2 million carryover. And they've done a great job putting all that together. And then we do have a sinking fund balance sheet, and it kind of, you know, we get this from the sale of our bond proceeds, and we are just paying off the bond with this money. So it's not really money that we just get to spend on anything. We make our bond payments every so often when they come up. So that's what that is referring to for the sinking fund. For the building fund, it's just got some, they're saying that we've got about 2.2 million that we can spend there this year based on the revenue that we're gonna bring in, and that only revenue that we get from the building fund is gonna be Redbud, a little bit from ad valorem, like it's the 108,000, but most of it's coming from Redbud, and then our carryover from the prior year. So that is what we're looking at. We're looking at 22.9 and $2.2 million going in for our general fund and our building fund. And then as you, if you are looking in, like I said before, the larger document, it's just going through our past expenses. They've listed out the different function codes and how much we want the excise board to approve for us that we're gonna be bringing in revenue. And that, it just goes in much more detail in the larger document. So, any questions for me on the publication sheet? This is what we'll publish in the newspaper. We'll send it to them tomorrow.
What did we spend last year?
I'm gonna talk about that in the budget presentation.
Okay.
It was about $18.1 million.
Okay.
Yeah, that we spent last year.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions on the publication sheet?
Anything out of the ordinary or higher or lower than you expected?
Well, yes. We had a $6 million carryover. A lot of that is because we received one-time revenue through Project 793 and through Project 795, the COVID relief dollars. We did have, you know, the extra $92,000 in the security grant that we brought in, and we're gonna get it for the next 3 years, but who knows if they'll update that. So we look like we're in a really good place, but those are one-time dollars that we get to spend on one-time expenses. And so while it looks really good, we do have to be a good steward and looking forward on how that's going to look going forward. And I'm going to show you kind of a soft projection of that going forward, so that we can be smart about how we move forward in the projects that we take on. But no, nothing out of the ordinary, other than we have some of those one-time funds that we have to know they're one-time funds.
Yeah.
So, anything else?
I have a motion on 7B.
Yeah, motion, on 7, sorry, let me read it.
7A was the presentation, and
Okay.
B is the
7B.
discussion of
Motion
possible
on,
action.
motion to approve the 2024-2025 estimate of needs.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Jaggers,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Yates,
Yes.
Bethany.
Yes.
Okay.
Item 8, budget presentation.
Now, we're not approving a budget. I am just presenting the budget to you so that you can ask questions and so that we can kind of talk about what it looks like going forward. So you have your budget packet, and the first page goes into detail. Our final revenue, what we brought in last year, was $24.2 million. And so you can see we're looking at 22.9 this year, so significantly less revenue coming in this year than we had last year. Our final expenditures were about 18.1, and we have a fund balance of about $6 million. So that's where we finished 24. And then when you flip the page, we're looking at, for this fiscal year, we're looking at a projected revenue of 22.9, which we saw on our estimate of needs. And what I'll say about this number is the auditor estimates it and leaves out about, depending on the function, 10 or 5%, or sometimes 2% on those lines. So we'll over collect in many of those function codes. So there should be more than 22.9 million come in. Based on how they estimate it, and then I also already know, like, we're gonna have the possibility of $200,000 coming in from the insurance that we haven't claimed yet for the roof project, which will go in here. So this is our estimate of the revenue that's gonna come in, and we'll probably see some more than that come in. For this budget, we're gonna project expenditures of $19.5 million. We're not going to spend $19.5 million, but I'm asking for more so that we don't have to do a supplemental application. And I'll tell you here in a minute kind of where our target is and where we want to be. And we projected, just so you're aware, last year I think we projected 19.7 million and we only spent 18.1, and I watched that pretty carefully. So, but we just don't want to get in a situation where we don't have the budget to be able to pay for something. When you flip the page and we go through our Function 1000 series, so last year we ended up spending 10.7 million in that series. That's the most important function code because that's instruction and we're here to do instruction. So I've put our excess amount. The reason that's so much higher than 10.7 is because we want to be spending our funds in instruction. And so I just want to make sure there's definitely enough money there to cover all of our instructional costs, and that's where we want things to be encumbered at the end of the year. And then everything else just has a slight increase just to cover any increasing in costs, just the general, sometimes they increase things by 10%, like custodial services, or 5%. So just increases that may occur to some of our costs in the other function codes. Once again, it says at the bottom we had $18.1 million in expenses, and we're going to do a budget of 19.5, which is under the 22.9 that we're allowed to spend, or that we're going to bring in revenue. Any questions for me on any of those? No? Okay. If you think of any, you can reach out to me. I'm probably not doing the best job explaining, so I will do my best to
You're
answer
doing
any,
great.
any
Yeah.
questions
Good.
that you
Doing
think.
Wonderful. I love it. It's very clear, very
Yes.
simple.
Thanks.
That's the way it should be.
Okay. For building fund, this is actually fun. And when we were talking to Dr. Schellenberger, he's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you have that much money in your building fund," and it's because of the Red Bud funds.
It is.
And the Red Bud funds have been amazing, and so if you're in contact with the legislator, I would definitely thank them for the Red Bud funds because it makes a difference for us. So this year we're projecting 103 in taxes. Last year we received about 711 for Red Bud, and then our remaining ESSER funds, one of those things that we've already approved and looked at for purchase orders, is going to be for the HVAC thermostats. And I just have to stop and say OG&E came and brought us a $2,000 check because of the work that Michael Mont has been doing.
That's awesome.
And so we told them, we said, well, we're getting the thermostats installed. It was before Michael got up there, and she said, oh, that's going to make such a difference for you guys. So we're excited about that, and we're just very grateful for the work he's already doing for
That's
energy
awesome.
savings. So it's going to be good. And then once again, we just had a fund balance of 1.2. That's our carryover. So we're looking at a total of $2.2 million that we have that we can spend. And then I don't know that these will be all of the expenditures that we have for this year, but it's most of the ones that we have encumbered already. And then we have some construction project. You'll see that line for $500,000. I left that open for anything that we might be doing, building improvements or something like that, with a projected carryover of $541,000. And so we'll just see where that falls with all this stuff. So, and then next, this isn't really a budget because we don't really get to set it. So we're gonna pay out $843,000, and we're gonna get whatever proceeds that we get to make those payments. So that one's not really a budget. So Adam pulled up, and I'm gonna go stand up there so I can point at these numbers.
Ms. Forrest, can you go to like maybe 125% or something on that? There we go.
Okay, yeah,
That'd be good right there.
Perfect.
that'll work.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so you can see we spent $18.1 million last fiscal year. When we were talking about that front page in that publication sheet, you saw that in all of our regular revenue that we bring in, it's about 16.1. Really, it's about 16.4 because that's down a little bit. And so we're bringing in regular revenue $16.4 million, and then we have our carryover that's $6 million that gets added to that. So without our carryover, if we didn't have a carryover at all, we would just have $16.4 million to spend. So we've got to keep our carryover somewhat healthy. And so when we look at this, my target expenses for this year are going to be 18.7. And we can go over that a little bit because I already know there's some revenue that's going to come in that's not accounted for. But that's going to be my target. And that target will get us down to a $4.1 million carryover. And then as we go into the next year, my target expenses, we're going to bring everything down to $17.2 million by eliminating some one-time costs. So the one-time costs are going to be like buses, roofing project, we're not going to be paying for that anymore. We're eliminating the custodial services out of the general fund, which is actually a reoccurring cost. And we're doing that this year, but that will help next year. And then we've got textbooks. We're spending well over $200,000 in textbooks. Those will be a one-time expense. And then we'll just get, the things we need here and there. Kitchen equipment is in there. Turf for ECC is an expense in there. We did get some donations for that, but we did pay for some of it. We did some matching there. And there are some other one-time purchases that we'll be removing next year to get down to that 17.2. And this is soft. This is soft. And this is saying if we go from 18.7 in expenses with a $4 million carryover, we're going to have a $20.5 million revenue. And then looking for going even the next year, this is very soft, just calculations. This number also includes raises. We don't know what the raises would be at this point, but I just proposed a raise. So that's included in there, and that's what our carryover would look like with all that stuff for the next year. So 3.2. We get rid of the one-time expenses, and we're looking at going down to 16.8, and this will be removing some of the OSIG premium out of the general fund and shifting over to the building fund, probably not all of it. And if we did that, that'll get us to a $2.8 million carryover, and then we're done with bringing us back down from the high. And you see in this next year, we even go back up 2.89, and we're back into a client, you know, going back up instead of having to decrease expenses. And so this is just kind of a plan. It doesn't mean that that's how we'll actually get there, but that's my plan for kind of going down and making sure we have a carryover in this $2.5 to $2.8 million range. And obviously, if we do better than that, then our carryover will be a little bit better. But really, you know, a $2 million carryover is okay. To get started in the year, I think we just ran payroll is about $700,000. So we have to at least have $700,000 to start the year to pay everybody. And then obviously enough to keep the lights on. But that's just kind of a soft outlook on where we are and some of the steps we need to take after having these one-time funds and the kind of target expenses we need to have. So I'll take any questions.
Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Jasper,
Yes.
I know there's a state limit that has
Yeah.
been off for a while.
Yes.
I assume it's coming back at some
It is
point.
back this year.
So what percentage of
We can carry over 17%.
of expenditures, right?
Of our revenue. We can carry
Of
over
our revenue.
Of our revenue, yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember if it was expenditures or revenue.
Yes,
So
yes.
are we above that right now?
We are not. So we had a $6 million carryover, but what you can do is you can subtract your federal revenue that you received
Okay.
out of it. And so actually we are okay right now, and we will definitely be okay
Yeah.
with this $4 million
When
number.
down there, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So we would only be in a difficult situation if we maintain like a $6 million carryover again this year, but we are not planning to do that. We are planning to get our expenses down into this 2.8. Or
What
getting our
happens
carryover
if you're
into
over
2.8.
it?
You have to pay the state
Give it back.
You have to give it back at the midterm.
So we don't wanna do
So
that.
we don't wanna give it back.
Now I understand why we're doing it.
And please take this with a grain of salt, because I can't, you know, see into the future what actually is going to happen, but we do need to be planners for what is going to happen as a result of not having $2 million worth of COVID relief funds, you know, so, okay.
Dr. Jester, I do appreciate this projection. I don't remember
yeah.
seeing that,
Yeah.
at least in the last 10 years. So
Well, you are so
I
welcome.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
And there was no action on that, so we'll move to item 9. Discussion possible action on the district's 24-25 all-school musical, Seussical the Musical by Stephen Flaherty and Lynn Aarons.
It's a rated G musical. One thing that we did discuss also is, because this one in particular probably will resonate with younger kids, is adding a 4th performance, which would be a matinee on Saturday, because one thing we've run into even with our other musicals is it's late for younger kids. So we really want to promote this one to elementary and promote especially that matinee on that Saturday to have them come out. But it's a fun musical surrounded by Dr. Seuss, and should be a fun one for all ages. So excited about that.
Yeah.
We've had discussions about all school musical and just what's in the all school musical, and with the people not only participating but wanting it to be something that most kids could come to. We do realize that not all musicals, or actually very few musicals, match like Seussical. And so I think there is going to always be a level of, even if you look like Oklahoma, like that may not be age appropriate for some kids. So I think parents will always have to use their judgment. But where we can, we have talked about, words that can easily be swapped out, Even last year, with our musical, there was a storyline that we altered a little bit. There are things we can do and will continue to do when we look through those to make them as age appropriate as possible for, you know, all of our kids. But in the end, some are gonna require parents to use their better judgment for those age kids. But this will be a nice one that, you know, is really for all kids, so.
Motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the district law school musical, Seussical the Musical.
Second?
Roll call vote?
Jaggers,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Yates,
Yes.
Pettit.
Yes. Item 10, discussion possible action on the regular board meeting calendar for 2025.
Just maintaining the second Tuesday of the month.
Motion to approve the regular board meeting calendar for 2025.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Jaggers,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Yates,
Yes.
Pettit.
Yes. Item 11, discussion possible action on the addition of an adjunct teaching position with certification in the area of dance for teaching POM, requiring board approval from the OSDE for certification in dance.
I don't know. I think it's,
This is for Jean.
yeah.
Yeah, so Jade Peralta has an actual hour in the day, where she's doing palm, and so, Mrs. Lott, contacted us and let us know that she thought for accreditation we needed to approve her as an adjunct position, because she has an actual hour in the day that she's teaching palm, so.
I make a motion to approve the addition of an adjunct teaching position with certification in the area of dance for teaching palm.
Second?
Roll call vote?
Jaggers,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Yates,
Yes.
Pettit.
Yes. Item 12, discussion and possible action on the following people for the mentor team for Susan Knox, first year kindergarten PE teacher, Aaron Wright.
So this is Mrs. Knox is a certified PE teacher, but this is the first year that we will have her teaching in a certified hour. And so being a first year teacher of sorts, she needs a mentor teacher, so it's part of the mentor teacher requirements. But we're excited to have her help out with the PE for our kindergarten students, which Ms. Chavez can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but we needed to add a second PE to kindergarten because of new requirements that required a certain amount of time in PE. We only had one in the past. Now having two and waterfalling that will meet that requirement. Did I say that correctly?
That's correct,
Okay,
yes,
very good.
due to their minutes that are required by the state.
Yes.
Motion to approve the mentor for Susan Cox.
Second?
Roll call vote?
Jaggers,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Yates,
Yes.
Pettit.
Yes. Item 13, discussion possible action to approve the revisions to board policies, BC safety programs, BD health services and communicable diseases, BJ internet access and acceptable use policy, BO parents bill of rights, DI leave, EA general student policies, EB admission, residency, placement, transfer and withdrawal, EC attendance, ED grading, promotion, retention and graduation, EE student activities, the index, and the table of contents.
So I'll briefly go through these. There's one thing that we're probably gonna have to do right off the bat, and that is probably table BC and BD. The intent, I believe, and still looking for clarification on this, the intent of those changes, one for the BC is they added suicide awareness. They didn't add, they changed the wording of that to be at least every trying to think, I'll look at the wording real quick, but it said basically once every 5 years, which limited you to having to do it once every 5 years. They opened that up to say, no more, no less
At
than.
least
Yeah.
or no less than.
Yeah, no less than is the
once.
exact wording, which gives you opportunity to do it every year. I think that is what was intended to be changed, but what didn't make sense to me is that you can see at the top of that, they crossed out the second and third paragraph under disaster plans and drills. When I asked about why that was crossed out, because from my understanding, we need to have those, And there's actually some plans that we will need to approve tonight for accreditation, which we received, and it said you need to have these plans in place. When I checked with the attorney, who is also Center for Education and Law, they couldn't tell me why, if that was supposed to be crossed out or if that was just a mistake. So I don't wanna approve that incorrectly, and since it is on here, we just decided to table that, and then we'll come back and approve that next month, which will still be in time for accreditation. So that one, again, I may be wrong, maybe that's not a mistake, but also the disaster plans and drills, their policy is worded emergency plans, and we couldn't figure out why ours did not say that when theirs did. The other one, so if you don't mind, we'll table that one. The other one, BD, again, if you look at the bottom language, it really talks about glucose monitoring, and so the intent of what I think the plan was supposed to be updated to change is that it allows our nurses to monitor digital glucose equipment on students. Now, we would not opt to do that very often unless we had a kid very, very young, but usually parents are monitoring that, and if they get the app on their phone and they get notifications, they then contact the school. What this would change is that it would allow a nurse to monitor that on their phone, but we don't feel like that is good nor necessary all the time, because if I get an alert on a weekend, in the evening, what's my liability with that? So this policy puts in place that it is allowed, but certainly not required. I think that is the intent of what needed to be changed here. But again, going back to the top, they marked out automatic external defibrillator language that I think that might have been an accident. And when I asked about it, they couldn't give me an answer as to whether that was supposed to be marked out or why, and so I think we'll just have to table that one for next time as well. The rest of them I'll go through and I think are okay for what the intent is. The BJ, that basically allowed a clarification for the digital communication with students. There was an opinion, I would say, that actually doesn't include family members. Now, the State Department of Education, in their training that they sent out to everybody, said it does include family members. So if you have a niece or a nephew and you're a teacher and they're a student, you also have to include their parent in, message, which, is interesting. But the State Department said, no, it does include that. I think there's been mixed opinions, but I think the final opinion has been that no, if you're a family member, I think what really needs to happen is they need to clarify that in the law, but basically the people who have talked have decided that it's okay to say family members can be excluded from that. So that is what that line adds, is that it makes an exception for family members. The Parents' Bill of Rights, the only thing that changed here is it basically has some language about what can and can't be taught. I think it closed off maybe a loophole of like an independent contractor that maybe it says we can't teach that, but we could hire someone to come in and teach those things that are not allowed to be taught. So it just closed that off and said you also can't have an independent contractor come in and do that. DI is about leave of absence, and it just changes some appropriate language to match the law as it relates to a leave of absence, and it specifies a lot of language there about what leave of absence can be taken for, extending leave of absence. It also clarifies notification of a person taking leave of absence to a district to make sure they know that if they don't notify us that of their intent to come back or not, it automatically closes that door, and they basically resign at that point if they haven't let us know. I believe it's April. It says in there somewhere, but there's a date in there that is kind of specified. The next one is do what?
April 1st.
April 1st. I thought that was it.
Dr. Bellis, just
Yes.
to clarify, these have all run through our attorneys? have
Yes,
gotten
so
their
they've been
approval?
given to us, by our attorneys.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. EB, transfer changes, of inter-district. This is an interesting one for us because the law stated we had to have a policy. They recommend that we have a policy even though we only have one school site at each. I'm guessing that's just, accreditation purposes. If they say, do you have this? We can say, yes, we do. Or I guess in other districts, if you ever expand, which we're not going to, you're covered. But there's also some changes to SPED, transfers and capacities with that. And so that language is also included in these updates here. So that's probably the most important part for us for sure. And it just talks about a communication system for special education students who you are denying on a transfer and the reasons for that and some requirements there.
What about EA?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did skip over that. EA is just changing some language for voluntary prayer, but also the moment of silence, and changes the language to specifically state 1 minute of silence as opposed to a kind of a general amount of time given. So just that was just a law that was passed to make it specifically 1 minute, and then there's some language about voluntary prayer and what's allowed. Thank you for catching that. EC has to do with attendance changes. These are changes that include 4-H, which again we don't have, but it opens the door if we ever did. It basically covers us also, so we don't have to worry about that down the road. It also addresses leave or absences for therapy, and that those can be excused absences. And then there's release time courses, and that was also behind a law of having to allow release time courses up to 125, and so that language just meets those laws as well. ED has to do with the Strong Readers Act, so just changes from Reading Sufficiency Act to Strong Readers Act, and there's some changes that our staff are currently going through and learning the differences of good cause exemptions, and it changes some of those things within RSA to what is Strong Readers Act now. Our staff's even getting training throughout this year on those differences and basically just the requirements of how that's fulfilled to get every student reading. EE is student activities. This one has to do with concussion protocols, AEDs, emergency response plans for cardiac arrest. And as I'm looking at that one, I'm wondering if they've just moved that language.
It looks like it.
So that may be what we end up finding out on that one. And Andy didn't say that, but as I'm looking at this, those are the things that
It's the same.
are, so I'm actually wondering.
Well, the defib looks
Yeah.
like it's.
They've
the
moved
same.
them down into here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cause it is there. So I think if we wanted to, that does explain it. He didn't tell me that, but to me, that seems pretty clear that that's what they've done, is they've moved that there.
Moved it.
So I think if we wanna approve BC and BD, I think we're actually gonna be okay, cause I think that answered that question. And then, below that, you're gonna see some plans that are cardiac emergency response plans, for middle school, high school, elementary school, and athletics, and those are, required, and then we'll post those as well. And so, those were just completed, by our nurses and, Nick Chafee, recently to make sure that we met that, requirement. And that will also be in accreditation this year. That's one thing they're gonna be checking.
Yeah, sure.
And those plans are specific, that the State Department gave us kind of a sample template to follow. And so we followed that template, to fill those out.
Where is that found? Is that an EE or?
It should be below.
It's below.
Yeah, it's below. It's they're separate files.
Okay, I see
Yeah.
it. Thank you.
you a chance to look at those policies and see if you have any questions.
And so these changes come to us by way of our attorney,
Mhm.
who has looked over our policies and the new laws and whatnot,
Mhm.
new requirements from the State Department, and made these recommendations to us.
Yes. Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about policies in general in another item that will be a little more general discussion.
Okay.
But yes, to answer your question, these are attorneys look at our policy, give us the changes to match the law, and then that's what we put in.
I would make a motion to approve the revisions to board policies BC, BD, BJ, BO, DI, EA, EB, EC, ED, EE, and index and table of contents.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Jaggers,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Yates,
Yes.
Pettit.
Yes. What happened? There we go. Nope, 14. Just keeps popping off the screen. Discussion on a process to convert the Bethany policy manual using recommendations from OSSBA during the 24-25 school year. Information off.
So just want to talk you through the thoughts for a process and get your feedback on it as well. So feel free to ask questions or give different varying ideas. So right now we have used the Center for Education Law for our policy book. And so the policies we just approved came from them to add to our current book because it matches that language. OSSBA also has policy services, and so we also receive policy recommendations from OSSBA. They vary in how they go about it. They certainly vary in how they code things. And so what I have noticed is OSSBA seems to be a lot more detailed, like they include more in their policies, much more specific information. The Center for Education Law tends to be more vague in their approach. So for an example of that, they might say standards of performance and conduct of teachers. As we got policies for both of those, the OSSBA lists all those out and added a new one that went into the law this year that would need to be updated. But the Center for Education Law, the way they have that worded, it just says will follow the State Department standard of performance of conduct of teachers. So it's really just a change. It's a difference in style to some degree to be vague versus a little more detail oriented. Now OSSBA's book is going to be bigger because of that, but it also allows a little less interpretation to some things, and just provides more information. If you're looking at policy and want to make sure that you're doing things, it provides more information. But essentially what's happening is we'll get kind of recommendations from both. We do also, Center for Education Law is also not very user-friendly. So right now when we go to look up a policy, it's not in a format that's very easy to search. Even when we update to put it back in. So it's not as user-friendly as some are. And I think OSSBA is geared a little more towards being user-friendly. So we would like to convert to OSSBA policy, but to do that, we have to take all the policies we currently have and make sure that we're not changing policies, we're just changing the format in which the policies are written. At the end of the day, we should end up with a digital policy book that is easier to navigate, a little more detail oriented. And as you guys probably have seen, we get like newsletters that explain some of the new policies and why some of those things happen through OSSBA. So there just seems to be much more of a focus on that specific area. So feel more comfortable moving forward with them and kind of using their guidance. But because it's so different, you can't take one and just say, well, we like this, we're going to use it here, because the coding is different, the language is just different. So the administrators and I this year plan to go through a process of just switching that over from basically Center for Education Law and our current policy book and OSSBA. To do that, we're trying to figure out the best way to transition, because if we approve a policy on one, but the coding doesn't match, you're gonna end up, as you go along, if we approve 20 policies to get this section, then you're gonna have policies over here that may contradict or just not, you may have two policies that say the same thing in a different way in two different parts. So we couldn't just bring 20 to 30 policies to you every board meeting and say, okay, now we wanna approve these and cancel these out, because they're just so very different. So what we'd like to do is just bring 20 to 30 policies to you each month, explain, as administrators, we will have a meeting every month, go over them, identify things that, to make sure the intent is all the same, not to change anything that, we wanna see changes from this to this with different coding and different language. There could be some situations where we have to go back to OSSBA and say, we need to change this because this is not how we currently have our policy in place. And then they'll do that, but when we bring those policies to you, it'll be 20, 30 policies that we've looked over, we'll want you to look over as well, but this meets the intent. But we don't wanna approve those until the end of the year, because we will just use our current policy book as it is, not worry about transition throughout the year. We get to the end, we'll bring you 200, and I think it's like 232 policies, and say, okay, now we've seen them all throughout the year, we're good with them all, now we'd like to approve them, and that way we can make a clean transition. It's the only way we could think to actually make that transition without some confusion of, well, this, and we really tried to see if we could even match up policy codes and do it as we went. It's so different, there's just no way to do that. So so that's the idea, is that every month we would bring you 20 to 30 policies to look over. We would go through them. Most of them won't even be as detailed as what we just said. It'll be this is this, it's the same policy, it's, but we would want you to look through it carefully too, to also make sure that we haven't missed something, although we will meet every month, talk to OSSBA, make sure that we understand everything before we even bring it to you. And so then you would ask your questions. If you would like something changed, we would even take it back to OSSBA, get that changed before we get to the end of the year to actually approve that. So, but that's the best way we can think to make that transition to where it's as clean as possible. At the end of the day, we should end up with a policy book that we feel much more comfortable with, and even moving forward with changes that we feel much more comfortable with the communication and the way those changes would be made moving forward. So, yeah. Questions about that?
Sounds like a fun process.
Actually, I will say this, like, it will be a process. The good thing about it though is, you don't often get a chance to sit through and read through your whole policy book. And by the end of this year, we all will have had a chance to look at every word in our policy book, and I'm sure there will be some things that we find that we need to talk about some more and realize we haven't been practicing it the way it's written in a book, a number of years ago. So I do think it'll be beneficial, but it will be a lot of work for principals and myself to get through. But
19 years ago, as I remember.
Yeah, about 19 years ago.
The whole big book at one time.
Oh boy, yeah.
Because I don't even know what the one before, but then Center for Ed Law went through and wrote them all up, and then we looked at them for 2 months. And
Yeah.
Yep. See, it's the only way you can do it. It's all over.
Yeah.
As far as the switch, you can look at them across, which is a good plan.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Do we need executive?
Staff reports?
Does anybody?
We have staff reports first.
Oh, staff reports. I skipped. Yes, 15 staff reports. There we go.
So I have a question for the elementary school. Have we had Grandparents' Day in the past, or is this new this year?
We have. It was in the evening,
Okay.
and it wasn't very highly attended. So it's something that we partner with PTO
great, and I love that you're having a meeting for them to see how they can get involved. So I hope you have a long list of
I'm having to pivot because we
options.
have tons of people and our space is very limited, so we're pivoting, but it'll be really cool to get to see them. We estimated it's probably gonna be students will get to be with their grandparents, so we'll have probably about 600 people coming through that morning, so yeah. I'll give you guys an update to see how it goes.
We'd like to hear about that afterwards. That's exciting.
It's cool to see that the Bethany Children's Health Center students are back.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
And we just have, I mean, just our student population is just so awesome and welcoming, and, you know, I mean, anybody, you know, rolling through the halls and they'll, hey, you know, everyone says hi, so that's pretty cool.
I do appreciate you sharing that success story of a student who started high school this year.
Yeah.
So that was great to see. Thank you for that.
And the multilingual program, tell us about that.
Yes, so that had a name change over
Okay.
the year. It used to be our EL program, English Learner.
Okay.
And that was presented by Heather Graham to change the language to multilingual, just to be more inclusive and
Sure.
just so that, you know, our students can celebrate the fact that they, you know, are usually dual languaged, you know, when they exit the program.
Which is awesome. As an
Yes.
employer,
Exactly.
I'm always looking for that. I mean, it's such a great talent to have that asset.
And that's what we want them to embrace that and see
Yes.
what an asset that is for
Yeah.
them.
That's awesome.
And congratulations to the 7th grade boys football team.
They're still riding that high. We have a week off, so we're still celebrating the first win.
It's worth celebrating. That's great.
And good night. Volleyball too.
Yeah, that's
It's a bunch
great.
of folks for
They have a
volleyball.
bunch of girls
Wow.
out. It's been really good. Bernhard works really hard, getting here early in the morning and having a plan to get them all on the courts at different times, and everybody gets a practice in, and so she does a great job with it.
It's really good.
It's one thing I love about Bethany is that you can try that sport. I mean, you can
Sure.
go out for it and try it, see if you like it, you know. Awesome.
Speaking of volleyball, do we have an update on the high school game?
No, they're playing right now.
Okay.
Haven't heard.
No, it's a.
I'm trying to get Miss Tackett to respond, but he only said he lost the first game.
Lost first set.
Since then, or first set, or, so,
It's a tough matchup.
This was, they were playing with the number one 5A,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
Okay, does anybody need executive? If not, we'll move to
Do we?
item 17.
Do you want to go into executive session?
Oh, yeah.
Whatever. Okay, here we go. Discussion possible board action on employment of personnel in addendum A for the 24-25 school year.
So these are just all standard,
Yeah.
what we've done
I brought 'em.
typically. All right.
Motion to approve the employment of personnel as presented in addendum A.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Jaggers,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Yates,
Yes.
Pettit.
Yes. 18, discussion possible board action on the resignations as listed in addendum B for the 24-25 school year.
Motion to accept resignations as listed in addendum B for the 24-25 school year.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Jaggers,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Yates,
Yes.
Pettit.
Yes. Item 19, informational items.
All right, we've got Camp Klassen coming up October 2nd through the 4th. Plan to attend that again this year. Hopefully that works out as well. Book fair is September 30th through October 4th. And our foundation auction, impact auction, is at the farmers market, and that is November 14th. So put that one on your calendar as well. They've got a lot of exciting things that they're looking to auction off.
Is the book fair open to grown-ups?
Of course.
Okay, just wondering. I mean, grown-ups that are affiliated with the school.
Right. Good clarification.
I love the
Sarah's
book
fine.
fair.
Where is that book fair?
It's in the elementary.
Yeah.
That's per usual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Library.
Good, great.
Love it.
Item 20, board member comments.
Thank you, Dr. Jasper, for all of the work that you put into this, and then forecasting out. That's very important for us, as some funds we don't get anymore, and so I appreciate all the work and how you presented it.
Thank you.
It's easy
My
to follow.
pleasure. Thank you guys.
Superintendent's report.
Very good. We've kind of talked about some of these things, but in addition to Mr. Mont, we talked about the check that he received on behalf of Bethany Public Schools for his work in energy management. As you all know, he's done a lot of work behind the scenes on just trying to help us save money at every possible corner that we can, and so appreciate not only the real check that he's receiving on behalf of our school, but also the money he's saving us just by researching and looking into automated systems, things like that I think are going to save us money down the road. Wanted to celebrate, we talked about vape detectors earlier, and wanted to celebrate and just tell a little story without some detailed data, but when we first put those in, we put one in one restroom just to see what is going on. And we were shocked at how alarming the notifications were, anywhere from 14 to 20 notifications a day. And it was, just concerning, sad, all those things. We put in vape detectors in more restrooms. Now we've got them in every restroom. But even with more vape detectors, with the emphasis that's been placed on it, even just within the year, I was talking to Mr. Joel the other day, and he had mentioned he had 4 detections in that particular day. So the efforts that they've gone through, which have been a lot of time, Mrs. Donnelly and Mr. Jewell, they get notifications, they are on it. Never seen them move so fast to run to a restroom, but they're on it, they're monitoring it, and I think in a positive way, students have realized this is important to us, that this is not happening. What that also has led to is we've kind of gotten our restrooms back to a large degree, which I think there was a lot of talk among the students that I don't want to go in there because I know what's going on in there. So, and even more recently, Mr. Joel and Mr. Martineau brought some, portable desks, if you will, or like podiums out there, and they've got their computer and they're right there in front of the bathroom. So there's a lot of efforts going into just minimizing this in our schools, and the very basic data is you go from 14 to 20 notifications a day to somewhere around 4. You can tell there's already been a huge impact in those things. So appreciate the board and the financial investment in that, but I know a lot of it comes from their attention to when those notifications go off. And then add to that our Renew program that we've added. We now have some better supports when it does happen to help those students. So very excited about from this time last year to putting in a pilot to now, and just the progress we've seen. Also, our middle school and our high school have great cell phone policies, and with the research that I've looked into, we're right in line with what researchers suggest. But even this year, which at the middle school, just to clarify, the middle school does not have cell phones. They can't have them out. I love that policy at the middle school level. And that's just how it is now. They don't even have a fight over it. At the high school, I know they've making additional efforts this year for in-class, and probably the biggest one is they've really heightened alertness of during restroom visits. Mm-hmm. So they do not allow students to take them to the restroom. And I think what I've seen from that is students don't ask to go to the restroom as much, because a lot of the reasons they were asking to go to the restroom was to get on their phone or do something on their phone. And so already they've seen a significant difference in just the number of restroom visits that kids want to take. So I appreciate those efforts, and we continue to monitor those things. Elementary had their first roundup, which is always a huge event. This year they had to be a little bit flexible and have it in the cafeteria because our gym floor got wet with the rain with the roof, and roofing company's taking care of that for us, but it's put us out a little bit. But they were flexible. They had great roundups even still. I know they're excited to get their gym back, but it's always a fun time for that first roundup. We have an upcoming professional development September 23rd, and we've got some items on the list. A rave panic button. If you've listened to the news, you know that alert buttons and things like that are a popular topic right now, and is something that legislators have designated in law for us to have. So we've got one called Rave Panic Button. We're gonna do some training on that in September. Our math curriculum, we want teachers to continue to have ongoing conversations, so we're gonna let them have some more training there. Our OETT grant, we'll have some extended training at the high school level. Ms. Williams will have CPI training, which is the restraint training that certain staff members need to have. We'll have some site-specific trainings as well. So I've got a great day planned for teachers and staff that day. Another exciting one is the after-school program began, and we just appreciate Bethany First Church of the Nazarene providing this program to our students and some of our families. Another thing I want to highlight is we had contract signing days for the first time. Normally what's happened is we finish the contracts, we put them in their mailbox, they get them, they look over them, they sign them, they give them back to an administrative assistant at their site, and then that just gets taken back to the administration building. And so this year the business office, and it took a collective effort of all of them giving up some pretty significant times of their day to go down to each site, sit down with the staff member, look over the contract together, answer any questions that they may have had, find anything that might have been a discrepancy or that they just felt like was, and then try to resolve that before we got down the road. And what we saw in that, because they also sent a survey, is that the staff really appreciated the opportunity just to connect and sit down and have conversation. And so that is something that I think we would like to continue, just because it's a nice connection, but also we ensure that we get the contracts right as early as possible before we're down the road and realizing, oh, there was a mistake there, and now we've got to correct it. So appreciate them taking the time to do that. I know that is not an easy thing to give up, but it was definitely well worth it, and the staff really felt appreciated for that. And then I want to just talk a little bit about culture. We heard the story about the Children's Center student having their first day of school, and what was in that story is a student who was welcomed, included, and just their experience in that. But that's just an example of a story that we see all the time, but don't always talk about. So I just wanted to talk about some other examples of that. We had a student last year who came brand new and came to us having been severely bullied at a previous school, to the point of just needing a change of scenery. That same student shows up at Bethany Public Schools, and the students not only welcome that student, are kind to that student. In some regards, that student kind of became a legend in their own right in certain ways, and there was celebrations that took place in a couple different ways that it was just a whole different experience. And parents reported, this is just completely different experience than what we just came from. And so that's a story. We had another situation where a new student came this year, and new students a lot of times, especially in Bethany, because they all know each other real well, so you worry, like, am I gonna be, or we worry, are they gonna be the odd one out because no one knows them? A student sits down at a table in the lunchroom, doesn't know the kids they're sitting with, and I've been in middle school, so I know how that can go. Sometimes that can be, what are you doing at our table, or who are you, or you're taking someone else's seat. Like, there are a lot of things that could come from that at the middle school level, and you know, saw an example where it wasn't the case at all. They sat there. I don't know if the kids said a word, and you know, like just sat there, but nobody said, "Why are you sitting here?" or "Who are you?" It was just normal day, and had happened several days in a row. And it's just great to see our kids exemplify that in a lot of ways, and that's not by accident. Our teachers teach that culture at the elementary. Our teachers model that in the classroom, and then our students live that. And so to see those examples, again, just want to take an opportunity to say that's not just a one-time story. It really is cool, just the culture that our staff and our kids exemplify on a regular basis. It truly is different. It's just amazing to see. And so I wanted to share just a little bit of those things, because it's not everywhere, and sometimes it's easy to forget, you know, the differences that you see. And it starts early on when you're teaching ready, responsible, respectful, and it continues on at a middle school level, when a lot of times kids can change in a lot of negative ways, and certainly we're not perfect, and I don't want to say that, but there is a difference, and I appreciate our staff and our kids for being a different kind of place. That's good for kids. So, and that is my superintendent's report.
We're adjourned.